Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Spencer Bradley from Tech Resources, and I'll be your host for the next 45 minutes. Our ultimate goal at Tech Resources is simple, giving you the straight to the point tech insights you need to make smarter business decisions. Today, we're diving into a massive topic that will save you from the fire drills on the weekend, which is how to protect your VMs with HPE and Commvault to achieve faster recovery and way fewer daily headaches. Now, before we dive into the good stuff, I have just three quick things to call out from our crew in the control room. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat at any time. Our speakers are going to tackle them live during the interactive Q&A session at the very end. Watch for live polls. We'll be dropping a few quick questions throughout the session to see how your environment compares to your peers. And stay till the absolute finish line. We're drawing names at the end for some serious survival gear, a Yeti backpack cooler, and a Nintendo Switch 2 for two lucky attendees who stick around through the final slide. All right, with the logistics out of the way, we're really excited about this session because HPE and Commvault share such a fantastic long-standing partnership. Today is about way more than just traditional virtualization management. It's about true cyber resilience. The new reality is that it's no longer just about recovering lost data when things go sideways. You have to be able to spin your entire business back up quickly, cleanly, and safely. The winning combo here is HPE's rock-solid infrastructure plus Commvault's data protection. Together, they provide a seamless edge-to-cloud solution that cuts out complexity, lowers your cost, and drastically accelerates clean recovery. What you'll see in today's session is all about highlighting this partnership in action. To break down exactly how they make this happen in the real world, we brought on two incredible experts who design these resilient environments for a living. First, we have Keith Vanderford from HPE's hybrid cloud workload solution team. Keith brings nearly 20 years of storage platform experience and specializes in perfectly integrating Commvault software with HPE storage infrastructure. And second, we have Paul Lancaster from Commvault. Paul's a senior technical leader with over 30 years in the IT world, with deep expertise spanning pre-sales engineering, data management, and security operations. He's a total pro at helping enterprises architect these systems. We've got a lot of ground to cover, so give them your full attention, please. Keith, Paul, the floor is yours.
As we get started here, next slide, please, Paul. We'll start with a polling question, find out what is important to our audience. The question, what is your top priority when protecting the virtual environments today? Faster recovery, protection and recovery from ransomware, simplification of operations, both backup and recovery, or reducing cost of infrastructure and licensing. What we find is that these are important to pretty much everyone to varying degrees, although with the rise of the ransomware attacks, it seems like the ransomware protection is becoming more important. But I don't know that it eclipses some other things like simplifying operations, because with IT sprawl, things become very complex. So simplifying is also a high priority. So give us your feedback. Which of these is most important to you? Paul, do you have a read on what you're hearing about which of these is most important?
I think, yeah, definitely from a perspective of in today's world, I think we're seeing more of what they can do in infrastructure and money that is compiling that down, and whether that's going to a virtualization platform. Licensing is also pretty well key in today's world, obviously with the growth in cloud. And I think, purely from the ability from an operations perspective, and we're seeing that a lot now with, let's say, security applications. The cost of keeping a security application up and running, but along with that cost is the education and the maintenance and the people to keep that running. So yes, that's what we're seeing a lot of these days.
All right, well, let's dive right in. Next slide, please. And you can go to the next one. First, a little description about HPE Morpheus Enterprise software. VM Essentials, which we'll be talking about specifically, is kind of a subset of Morpheus Enterprise. But to set the context, we'll talk just a little about Morpheus Enterprise. It is a full-featured hybrid cloud management platform. It provides not only management of VMs, but also containers, applications across all kinds of cloud instances, both on premises and uh, public cloud. It's a multi-cloud environment. There is a Commvault plugin for HPE Morpheus Enterprise. There's a link here in the presentation. It is a clickable link. Once you download the presentation, you can see that. Um, this this Commvault plugin works well for Morpheus Enterprise, but because VM Essentials is a subset of Enterprise, the plugin doesn't work quite the same in VM Essentials. Morpheus Enterprise sits just above VM Essentials in the software stack. Next slide, please. Now, a little about what is VM Essentials and why should you care? It is lightweight, but it's also enterprise grade, so it's not low budget software. It's designed to be specifically for managing VM workloads. It's integrated tightly with HPE infrastructure storage, also partners like Commvault. It's built specifically for protection and recovery of virtual machines, and it is future ready. It grows with Morpheus Enterprise and there is an upgrade path. If you start with VM Essentials and decide you need to upgrade to Morpheus Enterprise, there is an upgrade path there. Bottom line, Morpheus VM Essentials is really designed to run virtual machines specifically. Morpheus Enterprise runs your whole hybrid cloud strategy. Next slide, please. We'll look a little at the architecture. We'll start on the right side of this slide. This shows the software stack on a single node of the Morpheus VM Essentials hypervisor cluster. It starts with a ProLiant Gen 11 server. Soon the Gen 12s will be out. Those will be supported as well shortly. Running an Ubuntu operating system and a VM Essentials agent, which is written by HPE. And then on top of that, there's a variety of open source software. KVM is the virtualization manager that this is based on. We use a number of open source resources there. And then on top of that is the VM Essentials Manager, and that's proprietary HPE code that's written specifically to handle the virtualization management. Now jump to the left side of this slide. You can see kind of in the middle, there are three VM Essentials nodes. A minimum cluster size is 3 nodes currently. I have worked in clusters with as many as 5 or 7 nodes. It can scale up as your needs grow. We use an HPE Alletra Storage MP B10000 for the backend storage. That provides the data stores that host all the storage for the VMs. Then running across the cluster is the VM Essentials Manager, which I mentioned before. And then on top of that, you have lots of virtual machines. I would point out that VM Essentials can manage not just VM Essentials or HVM clusters, but it can also manage VMware clusters. So you can configure, you can add VMware as a hypervisor into the VM Essentials management console, and then you can manage across both infrastructure stacks. Next slide, please. Specifically speaking about backup with Commvault, backup and recovery, there are a couple of supported backup types with Commvault. We support both image-based backup, which is sometimes called agentless, and also agent-based backup. We'll start with image-based. It is natively integrated with Commvault beginning in version 11.40. It provides backup and recovery of entire VMs through the hypervisor host. So the backup is handled at the host, the hypervisor host level, not just the individual VM. So in order to accomplish that, Commvault's virtual server agent package is installed on the hypervisor host. There's no need to install anything on individual virtual machines. You can do full restore of VMs either in place or out of place to recover a VM that's been compromised or corrupted. Or out of place, you can spin up a new VM from that image in any VM Essentials cluster that is managed by the same instance of VM Essentials. I'll talk about cross hypervisor in just a minute. You can also do, in addition to full VM recovery, you can also do granular file level restore if that's what's needed. And supported disk types are NFS and GFS2. For agent-based backup, that requires installing the Commvault file system agent on every VM to be protected. And that works well in small environments. It's not really practical in a large scale VM farm. That's why we have the agentless backup, which runs at the hypervisor host level. But this agent-based backup still can be especially useful in certain cases. For example, if you have an Oracle or a SQL database that's protected separately, you may need to protect only the log files from that database server. So you can install the Commvault file system agent and protect only those log files. Next slide, please. There are a few limitations, a few caveats with the image-based or agentless backup. Currently, there is no support for B10,000 pass-through disks, such as are used in Private Cloud Business Edition, HPE's PCBE kind of infrastructure in a box is how they describe that. There is development work in progress for that. I don't have the timing of that just yet. There's also no support for change block tracking. So incremental backups are done using CRC scans instead of change block tracking. What the practical effect of that is, an incremental backup still has to scan the whole disk to look for changes. So an incremental backup will still take a significant amount of time, not quite as much as a full backup, but still the whole disk does have to be scanned for each backup, even if it's an incremental. Development work is in progress on that. Again, I don't have the schedule for when that may be released. Cross-hypervisor restore, I mentioned just briefly on the previous slide. That is not supported yet. You cannot use VM Essentials to migrate a VM from VMware into VM Essentials or the reverse direction. That's not supported yet, but there are other tools currently available for that migration. Morpheus Enterprise has a migration tool built in. Also, Zerto has a migration capability. So that cross-hypervisor support is in the works. But in the meantime, there are other tools available to do that job. The last thing on this slide is there is no live recovery of VMs. Commvault provides a feature called live recovery, which makes recovery of a virtual machine much faster. Typically, the way it works in VMware, you mount the data store where the backup resides. You mount that as a data store to the vSphere VMware hypervisor, and then boot from that. It turns out KVM, which HPE Morpheus Enterprise and Morpheus VM Essentials are both based on, does not support that ability to mount a data store, a backup repository as a data store, and then boot from that. And that's a limitation of KVM, so there's not anything that HPE or Commvault can do about that. Next slide, please.
Yeah, just to add to that, Keith, yeah, with we do have those basic migrations built
Okay.
in now, but there's also the development of the PCBE and the PCE, the directed to disk for the MP side of things, and that's all tracking very nicely for August release in a new revision. So just an update on
Oh,
that.
okay. That's great. Great news. Thanks, Paul. Moving right along here to add VM Essentials, to add that as a hypervisor in the Commvault software, there is a prerequisite. First thing you have to do is install, as I mentioned, that virtual server agent package on each node of the Morpheus VM Essentials cluster. Once you've done that, then any VM that the cluster nodes can see can be protected, whether the VM is running or not. The steps to do that in the GUI, you go to the protect virtualization, and then you can click on the add hypervisor. When you do that, next slide, please. Commvault presents you with a list of hypervisors to choose from. You'd scroll down if necessary, find the one that's marked Morpheus VM Essentials, click on that, and hit the next button. Next slide, please. And that brings you to this page where you enter the IP address and the credentials for the cluster, for the HVM cluster. And then for the access nodes, you would specify each of the HVM cluster nodes. Once you've done that, then Commvault recognizes the VM Essentials cluster and can access and do all of the backups and restores and everything that we've mentioned. Next slide, please. This is a list of resources that are available. These are clickable links. So if you download the presentation after the webinar, you can find these links to lots of resources across both HPE and Commvault. Several of these are very high level. Some of them are much more technical to give you whatever level of detail you require. And with that, I will hand it off to Paul to talk more specifically about the Commvault side. Paul, take it away.
Thanks very much, Keith. So with Commvault, it's been very much a change, and why I say a change is that if we look at traditional backup over the years, it's designed for data retention, designed for not confronting the modern cyber threats we're getting today. And today's hybrid world, it's spanning across SaaS, cloud, on-prem. Um, Attacks don't just encrypt data. They now are traditionally targeting identity, admin privileges, and the backup infrastructure itself. So a lot of the development from a Commvault cloud perspective has been around our resiliency. And working on the resiliency side, we've incorporated a lot of technologies working very closely with HPE. So let's sort of shift a little bit of focus. We've talked a lot around the VME protection. I'll go a little bit into what we're doing with the X10000 and Commvault. Give you a bit of an insight into our new hyperscale flex and really talk around the clean room AGP, immutable side of things, IRE that we know of today. So moving on to the second polling question, and this one is very relevant to today's world. So the question is, how confident are you in recovering critical virtual workloads after a ransomware attack? So there's four answers. Very confident. So that means you do some regular testing. Somewhat confident, you have a limited scope for testing, and not confident where there's gaps exist and you need to do that. And the final one is, you're unsure. You've really done no assessment to see what's there. So from that perspective, we see a lot of organizations these days around their testing, their validating, putting into best practice. So there's a lot of planning goes on there. just to give you a little bit of an insight, one we saw recently that where there was an anomaly in an organization and some of their server infrastructure went down, their actual plan of recovery process was sitting on one of those servers. So, it's small things like that that you need to do. But let's have a look at what the results are in the poll. So we talked a little bit there earlier around what we're doing in the way of cyber resilience. So it's a problem these days that organisations are facing, and there are some major risks. So ransomware can corrupt both live data and backup data. It's hard to know what's actually clean for a safe restore, but we're seeing compliance, we're seeing regulatory areas changing, and the areas now that we're also seeing is the data protection, the backup environment being audited. So even if you know that your backups are clean, you've always got to have that insurance policy behind that. You know that the combination of what software you're using, what Commvault arenas are within those software, what the HP infrastructure is, and this gives you basically the ability to create what we call as our cyber resilience vault. So some of the features around the vault is around the immutable storage side of things. So that's where data cannot be changed or deleted. It sits in a vault by itself. It's an air-gapped isolation. It's separate from your main network. So in theory, it can't be reached except for those who are basically looking after that environment. The other side of this, we have the automation of validated workflows. And what I mean by that is like there's a continuous cross-check of the backups for integrity, and that's through our clean room technology. We also have the ability through our cyber resilience vault to look at our threat scan and risk analysis, and that identifies the areas of clean point recovery, and also identifies those sensitive data risks that can be maybe isolated for forensics or utilized in other ways. There's also areas around where we talk about generally around being digital safe, and that digital safe is basically having the ability to be clean for a backup and recovery perspective. Areas here that are very I suppose prominent to organizations is not only the protection of your workflows, your virtualization stack, your physical servers, but also the protection of Active Directory. And that's the main thing we're seeing in today's world. So unless you have an Active Directory that you can bring back up and that is clean and that is fully capable and do that in an automated fashion, it becomes very hard for customers to guarantee they have a clean point of recovery from an attack for their users to utilize. So just moving on from that, so let's have a look at what we can see from in our perspective on the hyperscale storage environment. So with hyperscale, it is definitely an area today that has allowed organizations basically to run a cloud-like infrastructure anywhere, probably delivering that real-time intelligence and having the ability to scale. So we often talk about architecture matters, and there has been your traditional edge. So that's your small standalone deployments, often across individual sites and often siloed. From Commvault and HPE's perspective, our hyperscale edge is a massive distributed architecture. So it's essentially managed. It can be across multiple environments, but essentially managed across a lot of locations to allow you to to get the best out of that technology. From a grid perspective, and hyperscale grid was previously known as HSX, hyperscale HSX. So that's a combination of compute, storage, and network, and obviously the software control, both from Commvault and HPE. It's all fully distributed, automated, and is very much scalable from that perspective. As you can see on the screen there, from 200 to 2.5 petabytes. And then the latest addition to our storage portfolio is the hyperscale flex. So I'll go into a little bit more into the flex and what we've done with that with HPE. But flex is basically designed and validated to work optimally up to close to where we've tested around 8 petabytes per storage pool, but it's not hard capped at that. And it's often, from the test results and some of the test results that we have that has come to fruition over the last couple of weeks on the flex side of things with the X10K from HPE. We've had some pretty aggressive test results. So we'll go through that in a little stage. So going back to our original area around VME protection. So we've bit of a diagram here, but the diagram is not meant to be an area of okay, what's going on in all this. This is more to show you just basically how this solution comes about. So this is basically allows a number of technologies from HPE and both Commvault. As you can see down from working from the bottom of the screen up is there's a difference in what customers are looking for in a storage perspective, what they're looking for from a secure location perspective from a backup arena. So if we look at here, we've got the MP, the B10,000, which is managing all our backup environment. So the ability to have, I suppose, a rapid and a clean recovery process requires a lot of technologies. In this area here, we can incorporate to our VME side of things the Zerto architecture, which is basically a disaster recovery, high availability option for your VMs. We've also got the backup arena, and through the X10K, there's a lot of areas in there from a ransomware defense perspective that we can build on. There's a lot of AI information in there that we pull out, and the integration of both Commvault and the X10K. It's a solution that works on all flash, so the speed in which it recovers is quite quick. So to give you an example, we just did a recent test of around 144 VMs. In that test, there was 4 media agents from Commvault driving through something similar here to a second DC as a backup storage environment, and we're getting somewhere close to 78 terabytes an hour just on the backup side there. The more impressive side was the recovery, and the recovery was about 2/3, depending on what the actual workload was about 2/3 of that speed. So yeah, some very impressive data from that perspective. I suppose the value from an all-flash architecture basically provides a throughput. So the throughput that's required, maybe you have some SLAs, some RPOs that require some very quick restorations at a low latency. There could be massive data sets around that, but having the ability to make sure that those data sets are available, clean, and ready to recover, regardless of of the process is very much key. So moving on to our area around the what we just talked about a little bit about then. You can see from an architecture here, we have basically we have the disk controllers, which are our basically our data movers down to what we have as our enclosures of data. So from this perspective, you'll get a sort of a feeling that there has been a deep integration basically done between our Commvault cloud backup and recovery to bring a performance to the table for very large workloads. And bear in mind that our entry level for this type of architecture is around the petabyte arena. So the ability for us to use when I say us, Commvault and HPE, to use an S3 protocol to allow us to get basically the fastest and possible speed times on restore pass to come to fruition is key. I think the what we also bring into play here is the DPA, which is the Data Protection Accelerator node, which streamlines a lot of the enterprise backup workflows, and that's combining the ability from a HPE perspective with their Store Once Catalyst technology to allow us to get the most out of that flash-based architecture. So there are a number of areas that are in our flex arena. Part of those areas are around what we define as our media movers, and you'll see there that there's a number of those from an HPE perspective that have been certified. I suppose a lot of people come back and ask, well, what's Flex going to do that your current hyperscale grid doesn't do? So a very good question, but I think the main answer is from a Flex perspective, it's designed for multi-petabyte and high performance environments. There's ability also there to do a lot of AI and machine learning, and seen this recently with the interrogation of data from a workload, for example, to bring out various attributes to do with a sporting team, and being able to build then a data set around a specific individual in that sporting team. So that's I know it's a bit of a side note, but we're seeing a lot of organisations now that are not only using that sporting now, but using that in their own business for business data as well. So this environment also supports immutable storage. There's a very much multi-layered environment for ransomware protection, and the ability to have a snapshot-based recovery, and having an anomaly detection sitting on top of that is very much key. So this will just give you a little bit into what the entry level from a specification perspective is, and I suppose the ability here is to basically have a infrastructure that will scale out across an enterprise without compromise. And when I say without compromise, it is a reference architecture tested environment. So from that, it's a future-proof design. The scalability of it, as I said before, is starts at that petabyte and is scalable to 8 petabytes depending on environment. So it is a very much a scalable arena. The security the compliance that meet the regulations of today. And also, it's more a design of and supported with an appliance like Slimplicity. So from that perspective, it is very new to the stable, but there is a lot of interest and a lot of testing going on out with our customers. Just changing gears for what we're talking about on today's thing is more around what we're seeing from a standard customer environment. And those customers come across a lot of verticals from manufacturing to education to the FSI environment, and not too many of them change from what goes on in the production environment. What Commvault and HPE have the ability to do is basically widen that production environment and widen that production environment into a technology that allows us to have what we class as a clean room. And that clean room is basically allowing the ability to recover without any haste. So what I mean by that is where we have our control plane, and when we have our Commvault software, the control plane doesn't have to reside in your production environment. And this gives us the ability to have our clean room technology. And as you can read through the listing there, it is an air gap protected environment that allows you to do testing, to do validation, and to also utilize in the time of need. So, in a little bit more in depth, so this is a cyber resilience HPE Commvault Zerto environment. It's end-to-end basically architecture that is split into, I suppose, 3 zones. If we look at it here, one being production, the other one being the cyber recovery vault, and the third one being that isolated recovery environment, commonly known as like a clean room, IRE. We see in that production environment, there's a number of VMs, file servers, etc., etc. What we have basically working in here is Zerto replicating near synchronously to support the vault. And that's like, given the levels of RPOs, really depends on what is targeted from a policy perspective there. We see that the Commvault performs those policy-based backups to those HPE storage targets that are listed. There's a lot of identity protection here. There's forest recovery from an AD perspective that's integrated. There's threat scan servers, and we go down there to the storage side. If we look at the cyber recovery side, which is on the right-hand side of the screen, that's a vault that's both physically, I suppose, and logically isolated. So what we mean by that is that this is very critical from a security boundary perspective in architecture. And it comes back to when we talked about earlier around architecture matters. So from this side of things, there's obviously that security recovery side. There's the ComServe from a cyber perspective that's been replicated to. There's a secure air gapping. There's the scanning of Commvault backup images via the threat scan. And there's also an optional Zerto vault there, which when workloads are required for very quick recovery, that's like that sub-minute recovery, non-cloud recovery, regulation, isolation, etc., etc. So that we have that. If we look at the third area there, so that's the control plane recovery side of things. And when we talk about the control plane recovery, it's from a Commvault perspective, our orchestrated response. So what this enables us to do is recover from a process, from a documented process that's managed, that's using the security tooling available, that's using all the dependencies and access controls as required. So I think, where we talk around the architecture matters, we're looking here, let's say we've got multiple scans happening across at a certain time. We've got that air gap that is physical, not logical. We've got a control plane that sits in production. We've also got our control plane replicated to our cloud environment, our clean room environment. And we've got support here for our on-prem, our SaaS side, and our non-cloud workloads. So from that perspective, I've given you a very high level overview of how Commvault's technology works with the various technologies that HPE and VME bring to the table. And some resources here that you may want to look at from a perspective of Commvault and HPE and how we bring together the technologies that we have, the solutions that we're building. And with that, I'll hand it back to Keith.
The mute button. Thanks everybody for dialing in today, for tuning in. I would just remind you that HPE Discover is coming up next week in Las Vegas. It would be great to see you there. HPE and Commvault will have a presence there. HPE and Commvault will be describing a lot of our joint solutions, lots of good work that's been done already, and things that are still in the works. As Paul mentioned, some of the development work that's hopefully track for release in August. There'll be a lot of sessions, a lot of targeted things. Commvault will have a booth there. Lots of good resources, lots of good information, and we hope to see you in Las Vegas next week. Back to
Excellent. Thank you so much, Paul and Keith. Now, before we get to the Q&A section, we'd like to review the results from the first two polls. And we have one final poll question to ask the audience. After that, we'll handle the Q&A and then give away some prizes before we send you off for the rest of your day. So what we'd like to do is pull up the first poll question, which was, what is your top priority when protecting your virtual environments today? And the number one response here was B, ransomware protection and recovery, followed by C, simplifying backup and recovery operations. Now, Keith, is that in line with what you're hearing and seeing out there today?
I'm actually a little bit surprised that fast recovery didn't rank a little bit higher, although I would guess maybe people are lumping in recovery from ransomware, hopefully doing that very quickly. So maybe those two are kind of lumped together, but simplifying backup, yes, that's simplifying the operations. That is becoming increasingly important. So that I'd say that's pretty consistent with what we would expect.
Absolutely. That makes total sense. That makes total sense. So the second poll question that we asked earlier was, how confident are you in recovering critical virtual workloads from after a ransomware attack? And for this particular poll question, what we saw was actually an overwhelming response to B, which is somewhat confident in limited testing, and then followed by A, which was very confident and regularly tested. Now that to me that seems a little surprising, but it's good to hear that people are as confident as they are.
Yeah, it is. I'm glad that people are confident. That means that they are doing some level of testing, maybe a lot of testing, to make sure that that they can recover. Because what good is a backup if you can't actually use it to recover? So I'm glad to see that people are thinking about that and making good headway in that.
Definitely, definitely. I mean, it's becoming more and more important, and To hear that level of confidence is certainly reassuring. So we have one third poll that we'd like to ask here, and the third and final poll is: what additional information would you like about the HPE and Commvault solutions? And please make sure to select all and any that may apply. And we'll leave that up for a couple moments to have people be able to dive into that. And what we can do, Keith, is we can hop right over to some of the questions that we received during the during the event. And
All right.
this is one that I think is really important here. But if agent-based and agentless backups of virtual machines are both supported with Commvault, when would you choose one over the other?
It's really a question of how much scale do you have with image-based backup that's much better suited to large VM farms where there's a lot of VMs. The agent-based backup requires installing the software agent, the Commvault file system agent, on every VM to be protected. And so to install that, to maintain it, keep it patched and current, can become quite a chore administratively for a large VM installation. So at large scale, the image-based is much easier to manage. Um, the agent-based backup is really, as I mentioned, more specialized in terms of having, if you have certain VMs that need to be handled differently than all the rest, that's where it would make good sense to use the agent-based backup.
Yep, absolutely. That does make a lot of sense. So for question number two that we got here, do you have to have Morpheus Enterprise to manage VM Essentials clusters?
No, you don't. VM Essentials is a kind of a subset of Morpheus Enterprise. VM Essentials by itself can manage both VM Essentials clusters and VMware clusters without having to have the full deployment of Morpheus Enterprise.
Excellent, excellent. And third question that we got that we'd like to have answered here is: if a customer starts with VM Essentials and later decides that they need more management functionality, is there an upgrade path to Morpheus Enterprise?
It's a very simple upgrade path, actually. All of the software is basically there. It's a matter of applying additional licenses to enable the additional functionality in Morpheus Enterprise. There are a few additional software packages that we would need to be loaded, but for the most part, all of the functionality is there, and it's managed on the HPE side by licensing.
Excellent, excellent. And from my perspective, I think when you make it easy for customers and prospects to be able to grow alongside you, it makes their lives easier and less to worry about. So knowing that there is that easy upgrade path to Morpheus Enterprise is certainly very reassuring, and it's great to hear that. And I'm sure the audience feels the same.
That really speaks to that simplification of operations that we showed up in the first poll results. That was the second priority for this group. So the intent with Morpheus Enterprise and with VM Essentials is to really do that simplification, make the lives of our IT admins a little easier.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Keith, I really appreciate it, and I know Paul had to jump off for another engagement, but we really can't thank you enough for the time here today. And what we'd like to do next is we would like to dive into some of the prizes that we're giving away today. So for this particular event, we had two really exciting prizes to give away, and the first prize that we would like to raffle off is for a Nintendo Switch 2. And the second prize that we're going to be giving away today is for the Yeti backpack cooler. And what we will do is for those that have attended live through the session today. We are going to, be reaching out after the fact to share the exciting details with you that you have either won the Nintendo Switch 2 or the second prize of the Yeti backpack cooler. But on behalf of Tech Resources, HPE, and Commvault, we'd like to sincerely thank you for your time today, and and wish you and everybody around you a great day. And Keith, again, it's been an absolute pleasure. The presentation was very informative, and really appreciate your time and Paul's time today.
Thanks very much. It was fun to be here.
Likewise. Well, thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you for the time.
All right.